Drama, conflict, and chaos. When you hear those words, what are the immediate thoughts that you have? I'm guessing that they're not excitement, right? But our industry is filled with emotion. We have clients that are dealing with a ton of emotion when they're planning their weddings. They're trying to merge two families. They have so many opinions. They're spending a ton of money on one night and they're overwhelmed with all of the decisions. We as leaders also are often dealing with drama or conflict or chaos within our teams or within the industry with other partners. But on today's show, I'm talking with Jen Trotter of Lip Service Makeup, and we are talking all about how to effectively handle these things, how to handle chaos, how to handle conflict, and to do it well. And we're not just talking about the big things, right? Like when you have to go tell a bride that you have to move her entire wedding inside because it's raining, right? Those are big things. Those are times when you know that there's going to be a little bit of conflict or drama. But we're talking about small things, things that maybe get said behind your back, or things that happen with a vendor partner, a conflict that may happen with a client, even if it's small. I know that you're going to love this episode. Just take it as an opportunity to really hone in on those soft skills that we all need to be even more effective business leaders in our industry. Oh my gosh, Jen. Okay, so we talk quite a bit about how we never actually get to interact in person that often because we're usually at the same speaking events. We speak at the same time. We see each other in passing, but we rarely get to connect. So I am so excited to welcome you to the Wedding Pro CEO podcast. Thank you for being here.
I'm so happy to be here. I am such a fan of you, Brandee, and such a fan of what you teach. You're such a great teacher, and I learn a lot because I listen to your podcast. Although I have not gotten to hear you speak in person. Why? Because we do always speak at the same time.
Always. Yeah.
When I look at the schedule, I'm always like, damn it, it's always at the same time.
I
It's just
know,
how
I
it
know.
is.
But I do like that we've at least gotten to see each other in passing. And last year at Wedding MBA, we actually got to connect for a little bit, which was a lot of fun. So
Hmm.
now we're gonna get
Yeah.
to dig in and really get to
Yes.
deep dive and help our listeners with some of the soft skills. You and I were talking before the show, and I was saying that I tend to really not be great at the soft skills, more because I tend to skip over anything that's not practical. And I'm excited because from your perspective, Jen, when you teach the soft skills, you do teach them with a practicality. Before we get too much into that, though, I'd love everybody to just kind of know a little bit about what you do and kind of how you fit into the wedding industry.
I will give you a super short version. So I'm Jen Trotter. I'm based in Dallas, Fort Worth, lovely Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. I run Dallas, Fort Worth's top bridal beauty team called Lip Service Makeup. I wear red lipstick every day. It's my signature. It's what I'm known for, and my logo has red lips too. So that's kind of how I came about that name. I started just me doing makeup on the side while I worked full time, and I did that for many, many years. 11 years ago, I quit my last full time job, went all in 100%, quadrupled the size of my business. I now
Wow.
have 23 people on my team. We were just inducted into the Hall of Fame as the best of the best. We've won 5 Best Hair and Makeup and DFW awards in a row, and now we're in the Hall of Fame. So we've really managed to in a somewhat, I mean, not short for me because it's 30 years next year that I've been doing hair and makeup professionally. But for a long time, I treated my business like a side hustle, and
Mm.
it was a side hustle until I changed how I treated it, which I know you talk about a lot when you coach and teach and on
Mm-hmm.
your podcast. So I'm a huge believer in that because I lived it. Once I went all in and set measurable goals, I mean, I blew those goals out of the water. Thank goodness. I feel so lucky and fortunate. But I wasn't able to grow in that way until I went all in
Mm.
and then set those goals. The interesting thing about me is that I'm also, well, how you know me is I'm also an educator and a speaker. I travel around the country speaking at conferences, and my area of expertise that I'm really interested in is conflict resolution and reducing conflict and chaos in your business, which I know it's not the most sexy topic. I get it. But the reason it's so important to me is I just think when I think about teaching about it, I think about giving you a gift, and
Mm.
the gift of sustainability and longevity. I can't explain to you how incredibly wonderful it is to be sitting here 30 years in as joyful and pumped and excited and in it to win it as I was 25 years ago. I mean,
Mhm.
that's insane, right? It's doable, it's possible. I've seen so many people wither and die, and whether it's they're just so burned out or they're exhausted or they think all their clients are mean, and it's really they're not all mean. You just don't know how to deal with them.
Right.
The different things that wear you out and take away from your joy and your passion and your ability to do what you do long term. So like you said before, Brandee, it's kind of soft skills, but I am not here to read you motivational posters and be woo woo about it. That's not how I am, and that's not how I teach. There are very practical tips and tricks, and really what I want to give is hope.
Hmm.
Because if you're sitting there going, okay, I'm a badass photographer, I'm a badass DJ, like I'm a really talented florist, but I am so like, I don't even know that I can do this. This is such a hard industry. It's so difficult dealing with all these people and all these vendor partners, and it's just so hard. If
Hmm.
you're feeling that way, I want to give you hope, because just like you can go to Brandee and she's going to teach you your leads funnel and all those things. But what I can help you do is clear the clutter and the chaos and get rid of that stuff so you can be 100% focused on what you're there to do. And do
Mm.
it for as long as you want. And if that's
Right.
10 years, great. If that's 30 years, fantastic. I mean, 50, I don't know, whatever you want to do.
Well, I'm so excited to dig into this topic, and I really love the title of your presentation at Cater Source. Like, I genuinely was kind of like, oh, this is so good. The tagline I think is my favorite, and that's kind of what we're going to dig into today. Is kind of
Okay.
exactly what you were talking about at Cater Source. But you guys, I have to share the title of this presentation because I really, really love it. But it was called Drama, Conflict, and Chaos. Oh my, the number one thing that can take down an otherwise successful business. What? And when you hear
What?
that, it's like, okay, wait, tune in because I'm a successful business, right? You think about it. Our listeners are listening right now and they're like, yeah, I'm a successful business. What is that number one thing that can take down, that might take me down, right? And I think drama and conflict and chaos are a lot of those things that we run into all the time.
And I'm lumping those things, and we said this before we started recording, but drama, conflict, and chaos, oh my, it's a takeoff from Wizard
Yeah.
of Oz. It's
Yeah.
lions and tigers and bears, oh my. It's all three things are really one thing, which is
Mhm.
danger, right? So they're going out and to look for the wizard, and they're like lions and tigers. That it's all the danger.
Yeah.
So when I'm talking about drama, conflict, and chaos, I mean the danger. It's the things
Mhm.
that are pulling you away from what you're there to do. And what's interesting about that is when you say drama, conflict, and chaos, people think of very big, dramatic, like Real Housewives of Beverly Hills type issues.
Right.
And yes, we do mean that. I mean, it could be something really big. It could be you get into a huge fight with a vendor partner that ruins your reputation. It could be you really screw something up with a client and they sue you. It could be something very loud and dramatic. It could be.
Yeah.
But guess what? It can be things that are quiet and insidious too. Insidious, quiet things. I actually had someone in my presentation who, before the presentation, said, I don't really have a lot of conflict in my business, but I just really wanted to hear this. And afterwards, she was like, oh, goodness, I
Yeah.
do have conflict in my business. And she goes, I'm realizing I've just gotten used to it.
Mm.
And I was like,
Oh,
wow,
I
wow.
think that's so true. I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I also think, too, that, I'm sure there's a little bit of this in every industry, but I definitely have heard and said the wedding industry can be like high school. Like there's lots and lots of drama. Not only just with our clients. I mean, think about it. The wedding industry is top of the most stressful jobs that you can have in the world for a reason, right? There's a lot of emotion at play. And so even just with your clients, but then you're talking about with vendors and team members now. You're a manager, you're leading people. So it's like a boilerplate of, here you go. Here's all the drama, conflict, and chaos that you could possibly have. So learning to deal with that and to mitigate it is really a lot of what you're passionate about teaching, right, Jen?
Yes, absolutely. And I neglected to say this in my intro, and it is important, especially with what you just said, is that you talked about the emotional weight
Mm.
that the wedding industry carries. I forgot to mention that I served for 10 years as the director of Make-A-Wish in Fort Worth, and I think most people are familiar with the Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
We grant wishes for sick children. It used to be children who were terminal. They changed it several years ago, so it's
Okay.
children who have life-threatening medical conditions. But basically, what you're doing for a living is serving parents and kids, parents of sick and possibly dying children, and the children themselves, and trying to create experiences, magical experiences for them, in a way that, I mean, people expect perfection.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the emotional weight of that is honestly 10 times of what I experienced in the wedding industry.
Sure.
So that really set me up, working with brides. I say it's a piece of cake. It's clearly not. We all know
No.
it's really hard. Jokingly, I say it's a piece of cake. But what I will say is it is easier because it's not life or death, at least. It doesn't carry
Sometimes you
that.
feel like it might be.
You feel like it might be, but
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the only reason I say that is because my husband's family, his dad and some of his siblings are all doctors. And sometimes when we're at family gatherings, I am shocked at how similar our stories are sometimes. And I'm like, you're actually dealing with life and death? I'm not. I'm supposed to be dealing with the happiest day. And sometimes it can just be really chaotic. But a lot of that
right,
comes because there's so much emotional pressure on our
right.
couples and with families joining and things like that, and we carry a lot of that weight for them.
hmm
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I've recently been doing some coaching with some bridal shop groups, and
Oh, okay.
at Wedding MBA in November, I'm actually going to be speaking in the bridal shop track, which I know you're like, what? But you
Okay.
don't run a bridal shop. But what they want, bridal shop owners deal with a lot of conflict and chaos.
Yes.
They have to deal with body image. They deal with all the emotional weight that we deal with in the wedding industry, but then also kind of like with hair and makeup, it's so
Yep.
intimate. It's really intimate, and so anyway, you can find me at Wedding MBA this November talking about that again. But we just
Yeah.
talked about if you don't really understand and delve into the emotional weight surrounding how your clients are feeling, if you just ignore that and
Hmm.
like, oh, here's your flowers, here's your dress, here's your, if you don't address that, and it doesn't always have to be heavy,
Yeah.
like sometimes people are just coming to you for the thing that you deliver and you're like, oh, great, fantastic, thanks, have a good day, yay.
Yep.
It's not always heavy duty, it's not.
Yeah.
But on the occasions when it is, if you miss it, or if you don't understand what's really happening and you're
Hmm.
oblivious to really how impactful that emotional weight is, it's going to be very hard for you to deliver experiences in the way that you need to be successful. But it's also going to take away from your joy and fulfillment long term. Uh,
Yep.
part of part of that long term joy and fulfillment comes to really connecting with your clients and delivering what they need at the time that they need it.
Yeah. I agree with that so much. And so, help us to give, could you give us an example of what some of those maybe smaller things might look like that we kind of tend to either ignore, or because I think all of us know, it's raining outside and you have to go tell the bride the wedding's getting moved inside, right?
Yeah.
Like that, we know that's a whole different level. But like some of these smaller emotional things, drama or conflict, can you walk us through some of those and maybe what we should be looking for in those?
From the most super basic point, look at the structure of your business. If the person who answers your phone or your gatekeeper is not awesome, if
Hmm.
they're, I mean, if they're just bitchy, if they're unpleasant, if they're not good at
Yeah.
being a gatekeeper, sometimes businesses, it's so weird, like they choose a lower, someone who's lower on their totem pole, like, you be the one who answers the phone, and they're terrible at it. The
Yeah.
person who is your gatekeeper, if you have one, needs to be awesome at communication skills.
Yep.
Awesome. Because you don't want to tank yourself at the beginning by having people say, oh, the person who answered my email was rude, or they didn't answer. I was asking 3 questions and they only answered one of them, or, you know, and it's weird. Like there was a venue, I can say this because they're long out of business, but there used to be a venue here in town that their gatekeeper, their person who answered their phone and greeted vendors and was there to let people in and all of that was awful. And
Mm.
everyone knew it. Everyone knew it. They were like, we hate doing weddings here because this person is so awful. I do not understand why that venue kept her on. I really don't. That they basically like welcomed in chaos and just let it grow and breed for
Yeah.
years. Like it's so needless. It's so pointless and needless. So it could be someone who's your gatekeeper, someone answering your emails or answering your phone.
Okay.
Then think about your forms and your processes.
Hmm.
If you have a form or a process or something on your contract that people constantly complain about,
Hmm.
why have you not changed it? Like,
That
why
is
have you
so
not
true.
changed it? If
Yes.
every single person says, like, well, I didn't understand that, that wasn't clear, change it. Go to a
Right.
lawyer, reword it. Like, if there's that is like real basic. I call it low hanging fruit. It's really low hanging fruit, but really look at your process from start to finish. What do people have problems with? What do they complain about? When
Hmm.
you're having to deal with things that people are complaining about, what are those things? Like what are people bitching about? Like what are they
Yeah.
bitching about? Deal with that first. That's really low hanging fruit, really simple, really basic. Then you look at your staff.
Mm.
If you have staff, if you're dealing with staff, if you have someone who's pissy and difficult and a bad apple, and by a bad apple I mean um, you really need to watch out for the kind of employee who's behind the scenes going, well, this isn't fair, and they're not paying us
Yep.
enough, and she's just, Brandy's doing this podcast and she's fancy. Watch out for that. That will
Hmm.
poison your entire organization.
Yep.
Many, 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 many years ago, I used to manage restaurants, and we had a chef who was doing that. And thankfully, our owner fired her on the spot.
Good.
Overheard her doing a conversation like that and fired her on the spot. But that, it seems like not that big of a deal. But
Yeah.
someone who does that, it
It's
can
like a
literally
cancer.
take down your entire organization. And a good way to counteract that is to really choose your staff carefully, bring them into your, you don't have to show them your books necessarily, but bring them into your business and let them know what's going on behind the scenes and what you're
Yeah.
doing, so that they know that you're working hard to make this business run. And that will kind of prevent them going like, she's fancy, and like that prevents that feeling of us versus them.
Yeah.
If you have a big feeling of us versus them, that's a lot of chaos you're having to deal with every day, that can be quiet and insidious, but gradually take your business down. It could
Yeah.
be you have a vendor partner that maybe they're a little bit difficult to deal with, or they're just asking you questions and they don't realize the question they're asking is kind of insulting. They're just like, hey, what about
Mm.
this? And you're like, I can't believe they're asking me this. Deal with that stuff instead of just complaining about them to everyone behind the scenes and going, I can't believe she asked me about. It's like you're creating drama at that point.
Yeah.
You're taking something and creating drama. Something that happened to me recently, a planner I work with all the time, who I adore. If she listens to this, hello Meredith, I love you. Planner I work with all the time reached out to me and asked me if I could remove a service from a contract because someone wasn't going to show up on wedding day. She knows that we don't do that, but I also know she's asking because the client asked her to.
Hmm.
She's not, she adores me. We work together all the time. She has a lot of respect for me. I have a lot of respect for her. There is no reason to feel any kind of way about that. All she's doing is, her client asked the question. It is her job to then turn around and ask me. That's all she's doing. So I saw that email. I was like, this is the deal. We're happy to put someone else in their place. It's not a problem. Just let them know that we're happy to do that. She's like, great, I'll tell them. There's no reason to get insulted or butthurt or
Right.
offended or whatever verbiage you want to use to describe that. But I know a lot of people that any situation like that, they let it mushroom into this big thing. And that's you yourself inviting drama in to live. And that's, I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to do that in my own business. I'm not saying I never get, not that situation, but I'm not
Yeah.
saying situations don't happen that make me feel some kind of way on occasion. But I think the key there is to have your feelings, they're valid, set them to the side, and then figure out what is the right course of action and what to do, and be logical about it.
Yeah.
Um, but those are some like super basic, daily, everyday types of things that can occur
Hmm.
that you don't realize are causing you a lot of I mean, I can say this too because these people are also long gone. But several years ago, at one of our local Make a Wish offices, one of our satellite offices out in the country, we had a couple ladies working there that couldn't get along, and my boss legitimately had to drive out to this location and sit down and talk to them. And it was because one of the ladies wouldn't say good morning. I'm not kidding.
Wow.
Like, that is ridiculous. Like, we, you have a goal of what you're trying to do, and your goals are to have a successful business, to
Yep.
create revenue, to support your staff, to pay your mortgage, to you have all of these larger goals. If you need to, write that stuff down and put it on top of your computer so that when this stuff starts happening and you're entertaining it, if
Mhm.
you find yourself having phone calls and conversations about these things that are distracting you from your goals, if that helps you, do that.
Yeah.
When I worked at Make-A-Wish, I had our mission statement and I had it taped up on my computer. I don't need to do that in this business because I'm always thinking about my goals. I
Yeah.
got kids in college, I got mortgage to pay, I have staff I need to employ. But anything taking you away from your goal,
Yeah.
whether you're inviting chaos in or someone's dropping it at your doorstep, you have to find a way to eradicate it as quickly as you can.
Yeah. I think that's so important. And one of the things that you said, I want to circle back to just a little bit because I talk about this with my girls all the time. I have three little girls. Well, not so little anymore, but I have three girls. And listen, drama follows women. Like I try to explain to
It
them all the time.
does.
I'm like, it's not going to go away when you graduate from school.
Nope.
Drama follows women. I'm sorry. But I think it is so important to nip it in the bud right away. And there's been so many times, I love that you said, like, address it. Don't go and talk to someone else and gossip about it because that is where the drama starts. And, you know, if you have a friend or you have a vendor, if you have somebody on your team that says something that makes you genuinely question, like, where do I stand with them? Or did they actually mean something by that? Go ask them. Go ask the question and say, hey, you said something. I just want to clarify, you know, or do we have an issue? Or did I do something to upset you? But when you let it fester, so often we can think the wrong thing. And then that thought that's completely invalid and made up is now become your worldview of that person. And it really causes so much drama. And my kids, I mean, I'm just taking it back to kind of just a human aspect. It's like my kids will say, oh my gosh, mom, I cannot ask my friend if they actually said that. And I'm like, wait a second. You think in your head somebody just said something about you because you were told that, right? You're not going to go to that friend and give them the opportunity to say yes or no, they didn't. Or you know, if it's going to hurt your feelings, or get over it. Like, that's it. But we're not going to sit on it. We're not going to believe something bad about somebody because you just like heard it. So I think it's so important, especially in our industry, to not spread drama, not cause drama. Gossip is such a powerful, terrible thing. um, and I just don't do drama. I can't stand it. I hate drama and gossip.
No.
So I think that it can be a huge cancer to your business. And I kind of want to go back to the team member here for a second. I know we've been talking about a lot of like client facing or vendors, but a lot of our listeners do have teams, right? We talk about building a team, how important that is, being a great leader. And that doesn't come naturally to all of us. But can you talk a little bit about how you would handle the situation you kind of talked about, which is that you know that someone on your team is kind of becoming that cancer. They're starting to say negative things about the business or about you or about the way the business is run. What would you do in that scenario? Because I'd really love to kind
Gone.
of talk through that. I know it's a thing that we deal with a lot.
Gone.
Yeah.
And here's the reason why. And
Easy, Jen.
it sounds harsh. I put my effort on the front end, meaning when I'm bringing someone new in, I am interviewing them and I'm looking for the words and phrases that they're saying. I'm looking for a kind of person who's buying into what I've built and the way it's run and the culture that we have. And having a really strong culture is important to start with. If you have a
Yeah.
strong culture, if you accidentally hire someone who doesn't fit and is kind of going to be that bad apple,
Yeah.
they'll weed themselves out pretty quickly. You have to have that strong culture to start with. So as harsh as it sounds to say they're out, it's not. You have to put your effort in on the front end and bring people in slowly,
Mm-hmm.
carefully, make sure that they are the best possible fit, and really like when I bring someone in, I always say to myself, and just I do the same thing with my clients. I always tell myself, this client's going to be my favorite client. I'm going to love working with them. This vendor partner is going to be awesome. I'm going to love working with them. This new artist I've hired, they're going to be fantastic. I can't wait to see what they can do.
Yeah.
I always try to approach it like that and really
I like
pump
that.
them up and send them all my best energy and let my actions follow the energy I'm putting into it.
Mm.
I put my energy on the front end. Now, when I've done that, and then someone slips by or decides to change and
Yep.
turn into that person, you cannot change people who do that. You
I
can't.
agree.
You can't. There is no amount of coaching and discussing someone who is willing to do that. Like,
Hmm.
I'm not talking, I have so much patience for normal human frailty and the stuff that we all, someone
Right.
being 10 minutes late, like, I don't love that, but it's not the end of the world. Like, there's
Right.
there's all kinds of things that someone could do to screw up. I'm using air quotation marks. Human frailty is something we all have, and as a
Yeah.
boss, you're going to see it in your employees and yourself, and you have to have grace, and especially for people who've been successful for you and shown up over and over and over. If they've shown up over and over and over, and then maybe they're going through a divorce and they're not as reliable, you have to have grace for that. And I
Yeah.
do have a lot of grace for that. But this that we're talking about, it's a way of thinking and a way of being, and it's usually really ingrained in someone.
Hmm.
It tends to be really ingrained in them. And they might smile to your face. Like, if you do address it, they might smile to your face, but they're going to keep doing it behind your back. And it
Yes.
really can poison everyone. If you have someone, you've built this wonderful culture, you've built this company, keep in mind, I had a company for, 19 years before I let anyone in. 19 years
Wow.
before I added anybody. So I built my team slowly, carefully with people that I really trust. A couple people have gotten through that did not work
Hmm.
for those types of situations. In my case, I don't have to fire anybody. It's gig workers, 1099 contractors. So if it's not a good fit, I no longer have to offer them work.
Hmm.
It's relatively drama free. People, I'll coach someone through if it's some of those other issues that I talked about. If it's things like they're really trying and not quite hitting the mark, or they're really trying to do stuff and maybe they're just not quite hitting it, I will
Hmm.
definitely coach them through. But someone actually trying to tear down my business, no,
Your
they're
character,
gone.
like,
They're
no.
gone.
Yeah, because if
If
they're
you
saying
don't
that to your
appreciate the
team,
blood, sweat, and tears, if you don't appreciate the blood, sweat, and tears, and, I'm very cognizant of the
hmm,
blood, sweat, and tears it took to get to where I am now and the sacrifices, the sheer number of years, the sacrifices, all the things I've missed, all the things I couldn't do, all the things I passed up, all the things I chose
yep.
to be here and to have what I have, the people I want alongside me to enjoy this experience and the good working environment I provide and the good income I provide and all the things that come along with joining me on this journey, I
Hmm.
want for people who are in my corner and rooting us along. And
Yep.
if they're going to be, if they're not on board with that, they just need to go. Because if you think like, well, I need to write them up and coach them through it and talk to, basically, again, that's drama.
Right.
Here's an analogy I want to give you. Your goal, if you think about a road trip, your road trip is to drive to this destination and you're in the car. The successful business that helps you support your family and makes you feel good and gives you long-term sustainability, that's where you're going.
Yep.
Okay? All this stuff is like a flat tire, or you stop in for like 12 restroom breaks,
Yes.
or go into a different city. Like, it's all taking you away from your goal. It's all taking you away from your goal. So, when you discover that someone is really tearing you down, or in that kind, I mean, it's a rare thing. I hope it doesn't happen to people too often,
Yeah.
but someone who is willing to be that, I don't know, to be that way. I think it's just a certain kind of person. I don't think you can change them.
Yeah, I don't think you can change them either. And we talk about that a lot in my group because, I'll have students that are like, oh, I heard one of my employees was saying this and it's bothering me. I heard from a vendor. Listen, I can handle an off comment within the team and kind of address it. But if you talk to one of my vendor partners and you say anything, It's like, you don't ever talk bad about your own family, right? You're supposed to like keep it in the family. We all know we're crazy. Let's keep it in the family, right? But like if you go to one of my vendor partners, done, no questions, you're out. Like it's not going to happen because you work hard for that reputation, like you said, Jen. And if you have, listen, I have an open door. If you want to come talk to me about some grievance that you have, let's talk about it. But certainly do not talk about it with others. And it goes back to
That's not
exactly
the
what you were
same
just
thing
saying.
though. Someone coming
No,
to
it's
you
not.
and saying, someone coming to you and saying, Brandee, I haven't had a raise in 2 years, and I think that I've brought this to the
Right.
table, and I think I'm worthy of a raise. That's above board ethical
Yes.
behavior. Whether you can give it to them or not, that's a whole nother issue.
Right, but they're
And
coming
then
to you.
they're coming to you.
Yeah.
That is, there's a lot of things that happen within a team and within your company, and it's not all pretty. Sometimes it is a little rough, and we do have rough times.
Yeah.
And you will have someone who's maybe they have an illness or a death in the family or a divorce, or maybe they're
Hmm.
just going through a really hard time, and they're not the stellar employee they used to be.
Yeah.
You don't kick people to the curb for any of those things.
Yeah.
That is not what I'm talking about here. That's normal stuff. That's just it's like a family. Like you
Yeah.
don't kick people to the curb for that.
Yep.
But in the case of a business, when someone has basically said, "I am against you. I am not in your corner," and if they would say to a vendor partner or to someone else on your staff, when they would talk you down like that,
Hmm.
I mean, they are basically in so many words saying, I am against you and I don't respect you and I want to take you down. And if you realize that and translate it into those words, it becomes a lot clearer on what to do.
Yes.
It's to me, it's just clear as a bell. There's no muddiness about that issue for me.
No, I agree with you. And yeah, I'm with you spot on that. But before we were recording, you had said something to me that I was like, I have to get this into the show. And it works so well with what we're talking about. And that is that you said you can't solve an imaginary problem with a real world solution. And just because we've kind of talked about all the different problems that you could have, right? Or not all of them, right? There's many, 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 many,
Right.
many different types of conflict and chaos. But I kind of want to touch on that for a second because I think we do this so often. And so can you touch on that for just a second, what you meant by that when you said
Sure.
that and just what that looks like?
Yes, absolutely. What I meant was when I'm using the term imaginary, I don't mean it isn't real or
Right.
viable or important. What I mean is it can't be fixed with a real, tangible, touchable solution. In my world, in the world of hair and makeup artistry, something that could happen is if you have someone in your chair who they're older and their face is getting more wrinkly, it's changed from how it used to look. Maybe they haven't worn makeup in several years and now they're wearing makeup again. And I had a incident where I had a someone who she wanted her daughter's wedding to be perfect, and she was kind of experiencing some of these issues. She has a lot of thoughts and feelings. So as I'm doing her makeup, she's talking about all of these things. It is a huge mistake to try to, what is really the issue there? Is it
Mm,
makeup? Is it fixable with makeup? The answer is no. What she really needs is she needs someone confident and in control to be like, "You're beautiful. You look great. I'm going to make you look so fantastic." No, wrinkles, we don't know her. Like it's
yeah.
all like that is what that person needs.
Yeah.
That is what they need in that moment. And you can apply that to anything. But the problem is so many people are so focused on their tasks and hard touchable things that they might be like, "Well, I can try this serum and I can try that." Oh, you actually made it worse. That
Yep.
is the same as saying, "Yeah, you are a wrinkly old hag." I mean, that's what she's hearing, right? In her head.
Oh my
I
gosh,
mean,
I'm dying. I was like, I want to talk about this on the show when you said it because listen, I am not known for my soft skills. Okay, let's just be super honest. Anybody who's listened to the show for any amount of time knows like I am all about like what's the task? Let's go get it. And I think that is me as a human in reality. Like I have friends who'll be like, "Do you want a hug?" And I'm like, "I want not for you to hug me. Like don't no. I don't want to hug." And I think so when you said that, like it really resonated with me because, sometimes often I can be so focused on the task at hand that I don't hear the actual problem behind what they say. And I think what you said, like you can't solve an imaginary problem with a real world solution. I love how you said that because it's so genuinely true. You have to hear what the actual problem is or think through what the actual problem is and be able to be confident and be able to like put their actual fears at rest. And when you try to just kind of like slap the real world solution on it, it can make it so much worse.
It can make it so much worse. Think about this. The difference between like someone coming to me, like if they've got a whole bunch of bridesmaids and we have this many artists and this amount of time, if they come to me and they go, I was thinking about the schedule and I know that you said we have plenty of time. If we could, I'm happy to pay for an additional artist. If we could have another artist, that would just make me feel better.
Yeah.
That is a real, like I can solve that by hiring another artist. Okay.
Yep.
That is a real conversation about real world stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if someone had another, this is real. I gave this example in my talk at Cater Source. I had a mother of a bride who was just literally the most high anxiety person I think I've ever encountered. Lovely, sweet, kind woman who just operated at a very high level of anxiety. And we had it all planned out and it was all set to go and I know what I'm doing. And about 2 weeks before the wedding, she called the planner and said, she doesn't have it and I need more people and it's not going to work and it's going to suck. And okay. The planner called me and told me this. This is a good example of this is not a real world problem. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, I know this because of my skill set. So I was super angry and mad. I put that in a box. I set that to the side. And I called her and I said, look, I know that you want everything to be perfect. I get it. I understand where you're coming from. Remember, I've got this under control. You know I've got this under control. It's all going to be fine. That's what she needed. Yeah. She needed someone strong and confident, and she needed a little pet. She needed some pets, and like I wasn't with her in person, but she kind of needed a hug, and she needed someone to be like, girl, I got this. Calm down. That's what she needed.
Yeah.
So if I didn't have this skill set and I approached that as if it was real, I would really make it worse. If she had called, in her mind, this is spinning like a tornado and turning real the more it goes. I always say it's like picking up farmhouses and cows. It's getting bigger and, it's just, woo, it's starting to become real in her mind the longer it goes, right? So if she calls me, she's creating this issue. She calls me, and if I say, well, I'm sorry, I could hire more artists, what did I just tell her?
Right.
I told her she's right.
Yeah.
She's not right.
Right.
She's not right.
Yeah.
I have it under control. So do you see how that made that imaginary problem, like by trying to attack it with something real, I made it worse?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't do that. I handled it right. But you could make it so much worse. Not only are you not in touch with your client and what they need, and you're missing an opportunity to bond with them, you're missing an opportunity to really shine and really set yourself apart. And again, that creates long-term fulfillment. That creates long-term fulfillment for you. Solving people's problems is very fulfilling for me. I really, really enjoy that. So not only are you missing out on that, but you could inadvertently make it a lot worse. Because in her head, she thinks you're doing something wrong. If you try to attack it that way, you just said to her, yeah, I am doing it wrong. I don't have it under control. Your anxiety was accurate.
Yeah,
No, I didn't do that. I was like, no, I've got it. And I've got it. It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, oh, it's fine. I understand. I know where you're coming from. I get it.
Yeah.
I know this is a lot. You want your daughter's wedding to be perfect. This is what I do for a living. Of course I understand. I get it. And she was just like, it was all fine. It was all fine. And it's because I knew right off the bat that it was, and again, I'm not using imaginary to say her anxiety and feelings and mindset. I'm not saying that isn't important. It is. It's just, it's emotional. It's an emotional problem. And I cannot solve that with artists and tools and brushes and stuff.
Yep.
That's not fixable. What she needed was emotional support. And I know that's not necessarily what people hire us for, but that is kind of what people hire us for.
Listen, I should charge therapy rates, okay? That is 100% half the role of a wedding planner is a therapist. And I would even venture to say most wedding pros we all do therapy at some point, right? Like the bridal
Yes.
salon owners, hair and makeup for sure. You guys are in the drama when all the things are happening and you're just quietly like listening. Like, okay, all the bridesmaids are
When they're
crying and this one's yelling at that one, and so you really are kind of a therapist. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
When the bride is leaning forward and grabbing my leg and going, please keep my mother-in-law away from me, please.
Yes. I mean, then you've
You
got to
know,
start running that kind of interference. So listen, we're multifaceted humans in the wedding industry, right? But I love this so much because I think it's really just, it's a great reminder of just how difficult it can be to navigate the drama and the chaos and the conflict. But really, it's quite simple, right? It's just getting ahead of it, being super open and honest about it, and understanding the root of where the drama is coming from, right? Where the conflict is coming from. So, Jen, I think this was a really helpful episode. I'm excited for our listeners to hear it and just kind of have that gut check reminder. Yes, okay, we deal with a very
I
high
want to
stress. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to wrap up with one thing that
Yeah,
I was kind of thinking, just to kind of put a bow on this whole thing.
yeah,
You said, these are things we all deal with, and it can be so difficult and it can be so hard.
hmm,
And so I just want to say to the listeners out there, people who have had these experiences and they feel hopeless, or they feel
mm,
like, I just don't know how to do it. I don't know how to fix this, or
yeah,
I don't know. It's not my personality. I don't like, there is, anyone can do this. Just like learning how to build your lead funnel, there are steps. There are things that work and things that don't.
yeah,
And if you understand the steps, it does get better and you can do it. Anyone can do this. Anyone can reduce their conflict. Anyone can take a situation like that with the tools, just like you have tools for all the other things that you teach. There are tools and steps and words and phrases and things that work that you
yeah,
can learn, so that you don't have to have that pit in your stomach when someone calls you. So that when someone's upset at you, you don't feel like a failure. So that when those things happen, it doesn't destroy you and make you feel like you want to quit. And that is the whole point of what I do.
yeah. I love that so much. And you're so good at it, Jen. So I would love for people to be able to connect with you. Tell us
Yeah.
where they can come find you and say hi and tell you that they heard you on the podcast.
Yes, wonderful. You can find me at a couple of different places. I would love to connect with you at Lip Service Makeup. That is my bridal beauty business. I am on, you can find me everywhere: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and of course my website, lipservicemakeup.com. So you'll look for black and white stripes and little red lips. That is me. I would love to connect with you there. And it's got my phone number, email, all the good stuff. Really easy to find. Then also my secondary one is the Jen Trotter. Just Jen Trotter was taken. Someone had that, so I had to get all fancy and put the THE in
I
front of
love
it.
it.
So I'm the Jen Trotter. But you can find me on thejentrotter.com, and you can find me on The Jen Trotter on Facebook, and you can find me on The Jen Trotter on Instagram. So that is where you can go. And if you're interested, if you're in the industry and you're attending conferences and want to hear about speeches and presentations and interviews and things like that, that's where I'm going to talk about those things and post about those things.
Awesome. Oh, so good. Jen, thank you so much for being here. This was awesome. I loved it.
Thanks for having me, Brandee.